Greetings to my dear guests on this video. I wish you a pleasant viewing and look forward to your feedback in the comments. They say your biggest victories should feel like standing at the top of a mountain, soaking in the wind and the sun and the applause. But that's not how it felt for me. On the day Onyx Tech announced a record $3.2 billion in revenue, our highest ever, I stood in the corner of the glittering conference hall with a paper plate of catered hors d'oeuvre, watching a stage full of men congratulate each other for what I had built. They didn't mention me. Not once. It had taken 4 years. 4 years of working 14-hour days, slashing burn rates, overhauling product development, and dragging our ailing systems out of the tech dark ages. I'd joined Onyx Tech when we were barely holding on, hemorrhaging clients and credibility after a series of botched launches. I was brought in quietly, without fanfare, Director of Strategic Operations, which really meant the woman we hope can save us. And I did. I built a modular rollout strategy that cut onboarding time in half. I led the restructuring of our DevOps pipeline, pushed for microservices when everyone else was still clinging to monoliths. I made enemies, sure. You don't change a culture without drawing blood. But I won more than I lost, and in the end, I delivered what I promised: stability, growth, and dominance. Our biggest client, a multinational logistics firm, once said, "Ginny's team doesn't just deploy code, they deploy confidence." I still have the sticky note where I wrote that down. So, yes, I expected a little recognition. Instead, I got an email. The subject line hit me like a slap: compensation change notice. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a bonus confirmation that just got phrased badly. But no, it was a reduction. A 15% salary cut. Adjustment to better reflect internal equity following organizational realignment, the email read. I stared at my screen as people around me clinked champagne glasses. The CEO, Martin Vellum, stood under a spotlight, talking about visionaries, risk-takers, and the next generation of leadership. Behind him, a slideshow flashed portraits of key contributors. I wasn't one of them. No photo, no mention, not even a nod in my direction, though I was standing 20 feet from the damn stage. I felt invisible. No, worse. I felt like I was being erased. It was subtle at first, the way the floor shifted under me. I noticed that my calendar was missing invites to the new strategy meetings. That tasks I used to oversee were now being funneled through a freshly created Office of Digital Transformation. Cute title, especially when I learned who would be heading it: Samantha Vellum, the CEO's daughter. Fresh out of Stanford with a degree in philosophy and a LinkedIn bio that included things like thought leader and vision strategist. I'd met her twice. Once at a fundraiser where she asked me if Onyx used the blockchain for our APIs. I told her APIs weren't currencies. Apparently, she didn't hold that against me. The worst part wasn't the salary cut or the slow fade from relevance. It was the realization that this had all been decided long ago. I was the workhorse, the fixer. But fixers don't get statues. They get replaced when the problems are solved. At the celebration, as they unveiled our new client growth graph with fireworks on the slide deck, someone handed me a champagne flute. I held it. Didn't drink. Just stared at the bubbles rising, vanishing before they reached the surface. Like me, no one noticed when I left early. I walked out past the valet, still in heels that pinched, shoulders tight under my blazer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But in the pit of my stomach, I felt something cold settling in. Something calculating. Because I knew something they didn't. The system, the very infrastructure we used to power our SaaS platform, the one that handled everything from client logins to data syncing, had a heartbeat only I understood. And it was starting to stutter. They thought they could cut me out. They had no idea what was coming. The HR office always smelled like lemon-scented disinfectant and coffee someone forgot to finish. It was too early, too quiet, and too staged. Like a waiting room before a scripted disaster. "Just a quick check-in about your new role," the email had said. "Excited to collaborate on next steps." I knew better. Lena from HR greeted me with a brittle smile, the kind you reserve for people you're about to lie to. She gestured to the small round table instead of the desk, Power Dynamics 101. If we sit side by side, it's a conversation. If you're behind a desk, it's a decision. We wanted to talk about how we see your next chapter here, Lena began, folding her hands on a pastel notepad. We think your experience makes you a perfect candidate for a mentorship-focused role. You'd still be involved in key initiatives, but more from an advisory angle. Advisory? I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Yes, she nodded brightly. Supporting the newer leadership, offering guidance without the pressure of ownership. It's less about execution now and more about legacy. Legacy. A beautiful euphemism for burial. Who decided this? I asked. She hesitated. Leadership consensus. We're going through a transformation period, aligning with future-forward structures. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. My silence had weight now. She looked down, adjusting a paperclip that didn't need adjusting. We'd love your help transitioning the team, she added. You'll still have access to systems. Nothing is changing overnight. Everything was already changed. Back on the 7th floor, the glass meeting room, once my turf, was glowing with a morning strategy session. I peered inside, just for a second, and there she was. Chloe, intern from last summer, fresh degree, big eyes, nervous energy. She was in my seat, literally. Same leather swivel, same view of the whiteboard. And she was speaking, confidently, maybe even rehearsed, while Samantha Vellum sat next to her, nodding with exaggerated encouragement. No one looked toward the door. I walked away before anyone noticed. Not that they would have. For the rest of the day, my email was flooded with handoff notes, files I had written, processes I had architected, being reallocated to names I barely knew. I was still CC'd for now. That was supposed to make it feel like collaboration. It felt like exile. By 3 p.m., my ID badge wouldn't grant me access to the executive file server. By 4 p.m., I was removed from the calendar for the weekly director's sync. By 5 p.m., my new title appeared on the internal org chart, Senior Strategic Advisor, Legacy. Legacy. Again. My office wasn't mine anymore, apparently. An IT guy named Jordy asked if I needed help resettling into the shared project pod. Resettling. Like I was some piece of old furniture they couldn't decide to trash or store. I sat at a temporary desk for the rest of the week. No plaques, no framed client letters, no space for my books. The woman who had once saved this company was now just another shadow among cubicles. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. Because they'd made a mistake. A small one, subtle, but fatal. In their rush to replace me, they forgot the system they still depended on wasn't finished evolving. It wasn't as stable as they believed, and they had no idea how to read its pulse. I did, and deep beneath their dashboards and vanity metrics, it was beginning to skip dot. The house was still. Not peacefully still. No. It was the kind of silence that followed a collapse, a kind of emotional debris in the air, thick and unswept. The celebration, the meeting, the HR ambush, each had taken its piece of me, and now I sat in the dim glow of my living room, trying to stitch myself back together. No music, no TV, just the soft tick of the wall clock and the occasional hum of the refrigerator. Outside, the streetlights flickered like they couldn't quite decide whether to hold on or burn out. I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by boxes I hadn't touched in years, project files, old client reports, scribbled ideas on napkins and printer paper. Proof that once, my work had meant something. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, but I found it. The folder was marked ONX_framework_V1, confidential. My handwriting, my careful lettering. Inside, a printed version of the original licensing contract I had drafted when I first built the modular operating system that Onyx still ran on today. Back then, no one believed the company would even survive the year. Our software stack was a Frankenstein's monster of stitched-together legacy code and forgotten vendors, so I rebuilt it, from scratch. Using a third-party architecture I licensed under my name, paid for out of my own pocket, because the company wouldn't approve the budget in time and we were already bleeding clients. The terms were clear: license valid for 36 months. Subject to personal renewal by original licensee. Failure to renew within 21 days of expiration will result in full system lockout and automatic deactivation of core services. I read the line again, then again. It was my signature at the bottom. Mine. Not Onyx Tech's, not the CEO's. They'd never bothered to update it, too busy with rebrands and roadshows, assuming someone else was handling the details. And the expiration? 19 days from today. They had no idea. A system they depended on, used by every single client across multiple time zones, industries, and currencies, was about to go dark unless I, Ginny Harper, renewed it. I leaned back, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. This wasn't revenge. I wasn't sabotaging anything. This was the natural consequence of forgetting where the foundation came from, of writing off the woman who laid it brick by brick. They stripped me of title, voice, access. But they forgot one crucial thing. I still held the keys. I closed the folder carefully, slid it back into the box, and pushed the box beneath my couch. I didn't need to bring it into work. I didn't need to say a word. Let them smile on stage. Let them promote Chloe and Samantha and every fresh face they could find. Let them forget my name. In 21 days, the system would remember, and this time, it wouldn't ask for permission. I didn't need a hoodie and a basement. No dark screens or flashing lines of code. This wasn't a movie. This was quieter, cleaner. I sat at my desk in my home office, coffee gone cold beside me, logged into the admin interface no one at Onyx Tech had ever bothered to restrict. They'd taken my title. They'd taken my team, but not my credentials. They assumed the system was fully theirs now. They were wrong. The core of the platform, OnyxStream, was built around modular bridges I had developed myself. Not borrowed, not outsourced, my code, my logic, my proprietary methods. And when I licensed the architecture to the company, I hadn't given away the crown jewels. I'd rented them, and now I was simply taking them back. Line by line, function by function, I began extracting what was mine. Not deleting, not sabotaging, just removing the essential elements that were never truly theirs. Disconnecting. The first modules to go were the API harmonizers, small background processes that kept data flowing across our dashboards, syncing time zones, currencies, and timestamps without friction. Invisible heroes. I'd tucked them deep into the framework, beneath layers of legacy code no one else understood. Without them, lag. The next morning, reports loaded 5 seconds slower, then 15. Then they stopped generating altogether for a few clients in Australia. I saw it in the system logs. Null return on sync cascade. A harmless-sounding error that was actually the first crack in the wall. By midweek, the sales dashboard, one of Samantha's favorite tools, froze halfway through a presentation. Her assistant posted in Slack, "Glitching again. Anyone know what's up with the Client Delta tab?" They didn't, because the Client Delta tab ran on a query engine I had written in my second year, an experimental script that optimized memory calls by redistributing server load on the fly. It wasn't documented. It wasn't open source. It was mine. Now it was gone. Emails started flying behind the scenes. It blamed vendor latency. Engineering suggested clearing cache. One junior analyst even floated the idea that it was a DDoS test from the cybersecurity team. No one looked in the right place. No one thought to ask me, because I was just a legacy advisor now. Background noise. But the system knew me. It knew when I touched it. And now it was reacting. The glitches were still small, isolated. But that was intentional. This wasn't a storm. This was a slow drip. A leak in the ceiling no one notices until the roof caves in. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel triumphant. But I did feel something I hadn't in weeks. Control. Chloe started wearing heels to the office. Not because she needed to, but because she wanted to sound important when she walked. You could hear her coming down the hallway before you saw her. Click, 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 like punctuation marks announcing her presence. She was still technically shadowing Samantha, but lately she'd started introducing herself in meetings as the director's liaison. There was no such role, but no one corrected her. She'd begun replying to emails meant for me. Even took over one of the recurring syncs I used to lead, framing it as a chance to explore fresh perspectives. It wasn't malicious, not exactly, just overeager, ambitious, but in that clumsy, sharp-elbowed way that pretends confidence is the same thing as competence. On Wednesday afternoon, I passed by the breakout room and overheard her on a call. I think we're going to sunset some of the legacy logic. It's causing all sorts of data artifacts, she said brightly. I've flagged the Ginny modules for review. The Ginny modules. I paused. She said it like they were some dusty set of outdated functions, remnants of an old version of the company. Something to be swept away so she could build her paper palace on a clean slate. It was laughable and insulting. Later that day, I walked into the analytics room, the one with the glass walls and the giant dashboard screen that used to pulse with the heartbeat of our systems. Chloe was already there, poring over error logs and rattling off theories to an overwhelmed IT intern. I didn't announce myself. I simply walked up to the console, leaned over her shoulder, and said quietly, "Those data artifacts you're seeing aren't from the modules. They're the result of the bridge variables being disconnected, which only happens when someone disables the mapping layer." She blinked. I didn't disable anything." "No," I said calmly, "but you told the team to stop loading the legacy reconcilers. Those are the mapping layer." "I was told they weren't essential anymore," she said, defensive. "By who?" She didn't answer. The intern awkwardly shifted in his chair. I turned to him and smiled kindly. "The errors you're seeing are because the system is reverting to default sync logic. It's not equipped to handle multi-point currency drift without the patch layer. That's why you're getting null on Q3 projections." He nodded, grateful. Chloe didn't move. I turned back to her. "You might want to slow down on trying to erase people's work, Chloe. Some of us built this place from the ground up, and we didn't use glue sticks and buzzwords." She flushed, but tried to recover. "I'm just trying to optimize what's here. Isn't that the goal?" I let the silence stretch for just a beat too long. "Then optimize. But don't pretend you understand it when you don't. That's not leadership, that's performance." Then I walked out. Behind me, the dashboard flickered. One more glitch in a growing pile. Chloe didn't know it, but the system had already begun to reject her like a mismatched transplant. And when it collapsed, she'd be standing right in the center of the mess, heels and all dot by Friday. Chaos had grown legs. Glitches were no longer isolated. What started as quirky delays and occasional sync mismatches had spread like cracks in tempered glass. Reports failed to compile. Forecasts looped into empty datasets. Dashboards began flashing red, not alerts, just confusion. Inputs that once flowed like clockwork now jammed mid-process, leaving half-complete visualizations frozen on monitors. The engineers were scrambling. Slack was a war zone of bug reports, confused threads, and increasingly panicked emoji reactions. People were tossing around words like stack overflow, memory bleed, and invisible bottleneck. No one could agree on a cause. Too many systems were involved, too many hands in the kitchen, and all the while, leadership kept telling them to push forward. Patch it. Restart the node. Try a rollback. But it wasn't a bug. It was an unraveling. And I was watching it happen from the outside, calm, silent, detached. That weekend, an email slipped into my inbox. From Gary Kim's subject, "Not a coincidence." Time: Saturday, 10:03 p.m. Ginny. I know you're probably not checking these anymore. I heard what happened, and I'm sorry. But I've been digging into the system logs, and I don't think this is a coincidence. It all seems too calculated. The way each subsystem degrades just after the next one loads. Like a sequence. Like someone knew exactly how this would play out. None of the new devs even understand how half the platform works. Chloe's been pushing hard to strip out your modules, and now everything's falling apart. I'm not accusing. I just wanted to say, I see it. Gary, I read it once, then again, and then I deleted it. Not because I was guilty, but because there was nothing left to explain. I wasn't in the system anymore. I wasn't in the meetings. I wasn't on the charts, in the credits, in the loop. And that was my greatest power. Absence. They'd tried to make me invisible. Now they were learning what it really meant to live without me. The logs didn't lie. The cracks were spreading across departments like a virus no one could trace. Sales blamed IT. It blamed product. Product blamed legacy logic. And Chloe? She kept smiling in meetings like it wasn't her tower that was tipping. Meanwhile, the silence I left behind had started to feel deafening. and they still hadn't realized what or who was missing. But they would. Soon. The message came on a Tuesday morning. Simple, elegant, just like her. From Nora Lynn, subject. Lunch? Time, 8:13 a.m. Ginny. I've been following the Onyx situation. If you're free this week, I'd love to talk. I think it's time we revisited that conversation from last year. Lunch is on me. Bring your fire. Nora Lynn, CEO of Diamond. A woman who once offered me a leadership position when Diamond was just breaking into the enterprise sector. I turned her down back then, too loyal to Onyx, too wrapped up in fixing things that didn't want to be fixed. But she hadn't taken it personally. Nora didn't chase. She simply left the door open, then walked away with the kind of confidence that makes you wonder if you should have followed. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, the kind of place with heavy mugs and linen napkins and no laptops in sight. Nora wore a navy suit like it had been tailored for her bones. When she saw me, she stood, arms open, not like a corporate partner, but like someone who remembered who I was before they tried to rewrite me. "You look taller," she said, smirking as we sat. "Must be the burnout," I replied. "It lifts your soul a little when you stop pretending to be okay." She laughed softly. "I heard things are turbulent." Turbulent is polite. We talked, circled around small talk, then dove straight in. She didn't waste time. "I want to make you an offer," Nora said, folding her hands. "Not a job, not a title. I want to give you a runway." I raised an eyebrow. "I've been watching what you built at Onyx. Your architecture is clean, modular, scalable. We need something like it. But more than that, we need the mind that made it." "You want to buy the system?" I asked. "I'd rather buy into it," she said. "Or better yet, partner with you to build something better, something fully yours." I blinked. "I can fund the infrastructure," she continued. "You lead the vision. You define the product, the roadmap, the brand. Call it what you want. Own every piece of it. We'll back it, and we'll give you the team to make it real." My throat tightened. It wasn't just a pitch. It wasn't a rescue. It was a resurrection. "I'm not asking you to join Diamond," she said. "I'm asking if you're ready to build what they told you never could exist. A company that runs on your rules, your values." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked out the window, where the world moved without waiting for anyone's permission. Somewhere in the chaos, I realized what I felt wasn't bitterness or fear. It was freedom. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't calculating how to stay relevant in someone else's machine. I was imagining what I could build with my own two hands. I turned back to Nora and smiled. "Let's talk terms." The building looked the same. Cold steel, blue glass, that falsely optimistic mural in the lobby that read, "Innovate with integrity." I walked past it without blinking. Past security, past the new receptionist who didn't recognize me. No one stopped me. No one looked up. Perfect. My badge still worked, though I had half expected it not to. I took the elevator to the third floor, the one no one visited unless something was broken beyond its capabilities. The server room. The air hit me like always, dry and humming with quiet, constant energy. A room that never slept, that never cared about office politics or titles or clickbait promotions. Just uptime, code, and continuity. I walked past the cold racks of machines to the small table tucked in the corner. From my bag, I pulled a sealed envelope and a folded piece of thick cardstock. The diagram was clean, precise, the original blueprint, not the half-mangled versions scattered through internal wikis. This was the true skeleton of the Onyx system, where every thread connected, where every dependency nested. No one else had ever seen it in full. The letter was simple. To whom it may concern, this system was never hacked. It was never sabotaged. It was withdrawn. Ownership is more than a legal document. It's trust. You broke that. And I no longer owe you access to something you never respected. You will rebuild. You will recover. But it will not be on my back. Ginny Harper. I placed the letter beneath the diagram and stepped back. The servers blinked in silence behind me, unaware they had just become orphans. As I exited the room, I nearly collided with Chloe in the hallway. She was holding a clipboard, her eyes wide with manufactured urgency. We both froze. "Ginny?" she said, like she'd seen a ghost. I looked her over once, hair pulled tight, blazer too stiff, shoes clicking slightly off rhythm. "You're here?" she asked. "Are you fixing something?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm finishing something." She blinked, confused, defensive. "We're stabilizing things," she said, chin lifting. "It's just some legacy junk. Nothing we can't untangle." I nodded, then stepped closer. "You think you're in control? That you inherited something? But here's the truth, Chloe." She straightened, bracing for criticism. "You didn't lose me," I said, eyes locked on hers. "You never had me." She flinched. Not visibly, not dramatically, just enough. The kind of wound that doesn't sting until the echo catches up. Then I walked away. The elevators felt slower than usual. Or maybe I was just ready this time. Not angry, not heartbroken, just done. Onyx Tech could write me out of speeches, wipe my name from credits, delete my user profile. But they could never erase the fact that the heart of their success was something they never understood. And now, it was gone. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about real collapse. It begins quietly. Like a hairline fracture beneath polished marble, invisible until the first chunk caves in. Onyx Tech began bleeding from the inside. The customer service lines were the first red flag. Hold times doubled, then tripled. Clients from Asia Pacific reported missing sync logs. European partners said their dashboards wouldn't load. The error reports came in like confetti, small, frantic, impossible to contain. By day 4, the infrastructure was buckling. Data wasn't syncing. API calls were timing out. The system that once hummed like a precision engine now groaned with every task. Recovery protocols failed because the auto-clean scripts I had written, were no longer there. The servers weren't down, not exactly. They were just confused. Like a machine running a language it never fully learned. At HQ, panic set in. Department heads pointed fingers across tables. Slack threads burned with messages like emergency escalation, failover not responding, and who has the root access logs. Chloe had gone silent. Samantha was in hiding behind external communication strategy. And Martin Vellum, the CEO, was reportedly on his 4th emergency call with investors before noon. I watched it all from my laptop. Not through hacks, not through back doors, just observation. System logs still visible through public endpoints. Uptime monitors flashing red. Outages tracked in real time across social forums and client dashboards. I sipped tea as I watched chaos take root. Screenshots of error messages started circulating on LinkedIn. A thread from a former client went viral. We were promised world-class infrastructure. Today, our team had to rebuild from scratch. Never again. By week's end, 3 major clients had publicly announced they were cutting ties. The stock dropped 12%, and inside the Onyx glass tower, the silence had turned to shouting. They were realizing now. Too late. This hadn't been sabotage. It had been dependency. Every line of code, every streamlined process, every hidden patch and preventative trigger had been mine. Invisible scaffolding that held everything together while they stood on stages and soaked in applause. They removed me, thinking the house would hold. But I had taken my beams with me. And now, it was all falling down. The auditorium was bathed in light. Blue, cool, futuristic. Cameras floated on robotic arms. Every seat packed with investors, tech journalists, and executives eager to see what Salvix, the rising giant in enterprise AI, was about to launch. On the main screen, a sleek animation looped silently. Introducing Vanta, the future of adaptive intelligence. And then I walked on stage. Not to applause, at first, just surprise. Recognition flickered across a few faces. Others squinted, whispered. A name they hadn't heard in a while, but hadn't quite forgotten. I wasn't wearing a suit. Just a simple black blazer, soft blouse, and the confidence of someone who no longer needed permission to exist. No music, no hype, just me. A single spotlight, a breath. And then I spoke. I didn't leave the system. Pause. 1,000 held breaths. I rebuilt it. The silence cracked. It was sharp, electric. And then Applause, deafening, uncontainable. Not just polite or professional. This was recognition. This was vindication. The screen behind me changed. Side-by-side diagrams. One labeled Onyx Stream, the other Vanta. At first glance, identical. But then, subtle differences. Cleaner logic, smarter infrastructure, evolution, not imitation. Online, the moment exploded. #Ginny Harper trended within an hour. She was the brain behind Onyx all along. Onyx collapses, and she rises from the ashes. Salvix's secret weapon wasn't a product, it was a person. I didn't scroll through all the comments. I didn't need to. Because the moment I stepped off that stage, Nora was waiting for me in the wings, eyes gleaming. "That," she whispered, "wasn't a launch. That was a reckoning." I smiled. Not for them. For me. For every late night no one noticed. For every boardroom I'd been dismissed in. For every stolen credit line and rewritten report. I didn't burn their system down. I built something better. And this time, my name would never be erased. Chloe watched the conference livestream from her desk, frozen. Ginny's name, her face, lit up the screen like something out of a dream. The announcement echoed like thunder in the sterile silence of the Onyx Tech office. She blinked, once, twice. Then it sank in. Ginny hadn't disappeared. She hadn't crumbled, or lashed out, or faded quietly into the background like they all assumed she would. She had just outgrown them, and built something stronger. Chloe felt something knot in her chest. Not jealousy, not anger. Something far worse. Regret. She had never meant to push Ginny out. At least she didn't think she had. They had joked together once, laughed over lattes during onboarding. Chloe had admired her, truly. But somewhere along the way, titles got handed out like favors, and ambition whispered louder than gratitude. She thought Ginny would always be there, stable, safe, a fallback. She was wrong. In her rise, Chloe had mistaken proximity for power. She had thought standing near someone brilliant made her just as sharp. But brilliance doesn't bleed by contact. You either earn your light, or you live in someone else's shadow. And now, that shadow was gone. Across social media, the headlines sang Ginny's name. Salvix stock soared. Onyx's plummeted. And Chloe sat in the same chair Ginny once occupied, surrounded by ruins she didn't know how to rebuild. Ginny hadn't destroyed anything. She had simply taken herself back. The moral? Don't confuse someone's grace for weakness, and never assume that quiet means insignificant. Some people don't shout. They rise. Ginny stood on the rooftop terrace of the new Vanta headquarters. 4 floors of clean glass, curved wood, and intentional silence. The kind of place built for thinkers, not just talkers. Below her, the city moved in steady hums and honks, but up here, the noise faded. She watched her team through the wide windows. Designers, engineers, strategists, all people who had chosen something different, something honest. Her brand was thriving. Vanta had just secured its 3rd enterprise partnership and was being quietly courted for a global health infrastructure overhaul. Investors called daily. Industry media labeled her a visionary, a tech renegade, a systemic disruptor. Ginny didn't flinch at the praise. She'd learned not to need it. The real reward was simpler. She was free, respected, and finally, building without betrayal. Her name was on every blueprint now. Her choices, her vision, her rules. And when she walked into a room, people listened. Not because they were told to, but because she had something to say. Chloe was still at Onyx Tech, technically. The office felt smaller now, quieter, less urgent. The energy had shifted, like everyone was trying to pretend they hadn't watched the walls crack in real time. Chloe had survived the fallout, but barely. She had been demoted after the 3rd client walked out. The director's liaison title disappeared without a memo. Her tasks became menial, the meetings fewer. Worse, she had become a cautionary tale. Whispers followed her into rooms. Even when no one said anything, she could feel the shift, like everyone had already written her ending. She wasn't angry at Ginny. Not anymore. She'd spent weeks replaying every conversation, every moment she hadn't stood up, hadn't spoken out. In hindsight, she realized what Ginny had been. Not just a mentor, Not just a colleague, but a shield. And Chloe had let them dismantle her. Now, she watched Vanta from a distance. Press releases, product demos, LinkedIn clips. Sometimes she thought about reaching out. Just to say sorry. Just to say, I didn't see you until it was too late. But she never typed the message. Some absences aren't meant to be filled. They're meant to be remembered.